Are you truly alone? Can you always see the eyes watching you? Sometimes the scariest thing is being watched without knowing it. Some matches can never be undone. David was a 32-year-old graphic designer trapped in the weight of loneliness. His days blurred into nights spent hunched over a computer screen, while his evenings unfolded in the silence of an empty apartment. Connecting with people face to face had always been a struggle, and his life had shrunk into a predictable routine. One night, desperate for a drop of relief in his quiet wasteland, he signed up for Tinder. He threw together a profile, an old selfie, a short bio, a few generic lines. He didn't expect much, but maybe, just maybe, something would shift. The next morning, a notification blinked on his phone. "You've matched with Sophia." Sophia's profile had just one photo, a blurry silhouette taken in dim light. Long black hair and a slender frame stood out, but her face was lost in the shadows. David didn't think much of it. Not everyone had a perfect profile pic. The first message came from her. "Hi David, your eyes remind me of someone. It's like I've seen you before." A faint smile crept onto David's face. He typed back, and just like that they started talking. Sophia's messages pulled David in like a magnet. She was sharp, mysterious, every word laced with an allure that hooked him. Days turned into weeks, and he felt a connection, like they'd known each other for years. But then her questions started getting weird. One night, out of nowhere, she texted, "Does the dark scare you?" David took it as playful flirting. "It can be creepy, but I'm used to it," he replied. Her response was curt and cold. "You'd better get used to it." A few days later, another odd question. "If you disappeared one day, who'd come looking?" David paused. "My family, I guess. Maybe a couple co-workers," he wrote. Her reply was just one word, "Not enough." A flicker of unease sparked in David's chest, but Sophia's strange pull kept him tethered. It was like he was caught in a web he couldn't see. One evening, a voice message popped up from Sophia. David tapped play, heart racing with excitement. A soft, deep whisper filled the room. "David, I want to know you up close." The sound was so clear, he realized he wasn't wearing earbuds. The phone slipped from his hand. The whisper felt like it was coming from a corner of the room. His pulse hammered as he scanned the space. Nothing. "I'm exhausted, I'm imagining things," he muttered. But that night, he dreamed of a long-haired, faceless shadow reaching for him. The next day, Sophia's texts came faster. "I want to see you," she wrote one night, followed by a location pin. When David clicked it, his stomach dropped. It pointed to his own apartment building. He bolted to the window. The street lamps cast their usual glow, but no one was there. His phone buzzed with a new message. "Look behind you." His breath caught. He turned slowly. In the corner of the room stood a figure. Long black hair, a thin frame, just like Sophia's profile. But it wasn't human. Where a face should have been was only a pitch-black void staring back. David's scream lodged in his throat as the shadow vanished. A breeze brushed his skin. The window was shut, but the curtains swayed faintly. After that night, David unraveled. Every glance in the mirror showed a paler reflection. Whispers haunted his apartment, murmurs, taps, sometimes his name called in the dark. When he checked Tinder, his chat with Sophia was gone, but a red notification pulsed at the top. Match complete. For a week, David didn't leave his place. When neighbors knocked and got no answer, they called the cops. The door was forced open, and there he was, sprawled on his bed, eyes wide open, a frozen mask of terror on his face. His hands clutched his phone against his chest. The autopsy said heart attack, but no one could explain why a healthy 32-year-old would drop dead like that. The police dug into David's phone. Tinder was still open, displaying a string of eerie messages. "Does the dark scare you? If you disappeared one day, Who'd come looking? Look behind you. And at the end, in red letters, match complete. Sophia's profile had vanished. No trace, no photo. The cops traced the messages, but Tinder's servers showed no record of the match. In David's room, the mirror held one clue beyond fingerprints: a single strand of long black hair. Lab tests said it wasn't human, more like something charred. David's death became a neighborhood legend. Neighbors swore they heard whispers from his apartment at night. Some claimed their reflections flickered with a blurry shape in the mirror. The police file stayed open, but no one could crack David's final message: match complete. What do you think happened to David? Was the person he matched with really human? Or was it a cursed spirit? Let me know in the comments. Are we ever truly alone? Emma was a 28-year-old office worker living alone in London. She didn't trust dating apps, but one evening, boredom led her to download Tinder. After days of swiping, she matched with Ethan. His profile was simple yet striking. Just one photo of him in a foggy forest and a bio that read, "Looking for a real connection." Their chats quickly deepened. Ethan seemed to know an unsettling amount about her life, as if he'd been watching her daily routine. A week later, Ethan texted, "Let's meet." When her doorbell rang, Emma opened it to find Ethan, tall, pale, but handsome. "Nice to finally see you," he said, his voice carrying a faint echo. She let him in. They talked and drank wine all night. Ethan's hands were ice cold, but Emma blamed the chilly weather. The wine bottle shifted slightly on the table. Emma frowned, but Ethan shrugged. Probably the table's slant. They went to the bedroom. In the mirror, Ethan's reflection looked faint. Emma figured it was the dim light. They lay down. As Ethan held her, Emma thought she heard a whisper in her ear, "You're mine." Assuming it was exhaustion, she fell asleep, only to wake up from a nightmare. Ethan lay still beside her, eyes open, not breathing. His body felt cold and stiff when she touched him. Suddenly, Ethan's eyes darkened, his face twisted. His arms seemed to stretch unnaturally, his fingers stiffening. He bolted up, grabbed Emma, and threw her at the ceiling with impossible strength. She hit hard, a crack sounding from her spine as she crashed to the floor, unable to feel her legs. Ethan let out a guttural noise, rushed to the window, shattered the glass, and leaped into the night. Paramedics took Emma to the hospital. Her spine was broken, and the doctors warned, "You might never walk again." Police reviewed her home security footage. Ethan entered like a normal guy, then moved oddly before hurling Emma upward. But Ethan Caldwell had been found dead 5 years ago in Hampstead Heath Forest. Autopsy records confirmed it. After the incident, strange things started at Emma's place. Her wheelchair's wheels seemed to shift slightly at night. A random chill filled her room, and Ethan's faint silhouette flickered in the mirrors before vanishing. The police tracked Ethan through city cameras. Footage showed him moving swiftly through the streets that night. The last clip came from a gas station 5 to 6 miles from his grave. His figure faded into the shadows. When they checked his grave, the soil looked freshly disturbed, but no body was there. Back home from the hospital, Emma struggled to sleep. One morning she woke to find wet footprints by her bedroom door. No one else was in the house, and the doors were locked. Shaken, she stayed with neighbors, but the unease lingered. At night, before drifting off, she started hearing faint tapping from the window. She'd look, but nothing was there, though it felt like someone was scratching at the glass. Emma's life fell apart completely. Even staying with neighbors didn't bring peace. One day she wheeled herself to the window and glanced outside, catching what she thought was Ethan's silhouette in the street. A tall, pale figure, head tilted toward her. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. The street was empty. She called the police, but they found nothing. Nights became harder as her phone screen flickered on and off a few times on its own. Once an E appeared briefly before fading, though she blamed it on a dead battery. Still, her anxiety grew, and she flinched at every sound. Eventually, Emma cut ties with her old life. On a neighbor's suggestion, she sold her place and moved to a new neighborhood, but the fear tagged along. In her new home, she still woke up unsettled. One night, she heard a faint dripping sound from the kitchen, but when she checked, the sink was dry and shut off. She called the police again, but they had no solid evidence to act on. Weeks later, activity was reported at Hampstead Heath Cemetery. Police reopened Ethan's grave and found his body there, as if it had never left. But Emma, still in her wheelchair, lives with constant dread. She avoids mirrors, thinks she hears a strange sound in the wind. "You're mine." Sometimes her wheelchair's wheels tremble faintly, though she tells herself it's just her imagination. Did Ethan really come back? Or was Emma's fear playing tricks on her? Some spirits never rest, and some matches never end. Paranormal never stops in Joseph City. Subscribe for more stories like this, and get ready to disappear into the darkness.